in game one, a big win for the Raptors up north, and they did it in not fully convincing fashion, but it was pretty convincing fashion. I think the Raptors did a great job of deferring away from their superstar. Kawhi Leonard's the guy. He's the catalyst. He gets everything done for them. But it was all of the pieces around him that got it done. And it was interesting watching Kawhi because unlike a lot of the other superstars in the NBA, it doesn't have to be about him. Yeah, the Warriors will talk about how their plan to disrupt Kawhi it worked. He only scored 23 points, but it was almost as if Kawhi knew that their plan was to disrupt him, and he wasn't pounding the rock into the hard court over and over and over again, just trying to create bad shots for himself. He was a willing distributor. And he didn't have a ton of assists, but he was constantly trying to find his other teammates, and that's why we saw Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet and Marc Gasol. We saw those guys scoring more points than they usually do. It's a testament to the kind of superstar he is. And it's interesting when you look at this Warriors team, they talked about the unfamiliarity that they have with this Raptors squad. They only played twice in the regular season. Steph and Draymond didn't play in one of those games, and I don't think Kawhi played in the other one. And so you can overreact, and I think a lot of people are and are probably overreacting to this game one loss on the road, by the way, for the Golden State Warriors. But I'm not overly concerned. They have a really good coach and Steve Kerr, and they have superstar championship players with the veteran experience and been through adversity. So I'm not worried about the Golden State Warriors because they lost game one. I would be worried if Kevin Durant doesn't come back, and we'll get to that in our next segment. But there's something that struck me as I was watching this game and started to dig around Pascal Siakam and even Fred VanVleet, who obviously feels like he came out of nowhere, Siakam that is. We know the story. He was found in Cameroon. Luc Mbah a Moute had a camp, and someone noticed him, and then he makes his way to New Mexico State. He's only there for 2 years. He gets drafted in the 27th round in 2016, and just kind of is a guy. And Draymond even talked about this. He's becoming a guy, not just a guy. There's multiple meanings of the same phrase, which I found very interesting. But Pascal Siakam he's compelling because he is the example of how the Toronto Raptors use the exact same model that the Golden State Warriors to build a championship quality team. Now, we back up 6-7 years ago. You look at the Golden State Warriors, and they draft in Klay Thompson and Steph Curry and Draymond Green, and there's not a lot of potential superstardom in those guys, but they develop, and we laud them, right? We laud the front office. We laud their process to building a championship team. They bring in Steve Kerr, and they win their first championship, and this was without Kevin Durant, and Steph Curry was just becoming the superstar, but the development of the team, of the player, was what was so interesting and so compelling and made them fun, made them likable, because it wasn't like they were just recruiting superstars and trying to win that way, get the best players that we can pay for, even if we have to go over the luxury tax and try to win that way. That's not what they did. They did it an old school way. They developed and they won a championship. They lost the second one, and then they bring in Kevin Durant, the big time free agent from Oklahoma City. They win 2 more, and we know their story, where they've been in 5 consecutive NBA Finals, which is a modern record. Obviously, the Boston Celtics back in the 60s have the overall record. They went to 10 in a row. But when I think about the Toronto Raptors, I kind of see the same thing. Now, yeah, I know they brought in some players. They brought in Kawhi, and they brought in Marc Gasol at the trade deadline, which was a great move by Masai Ujiri. But Pascal Siakam was a 27th pick in 2016. He spent the majority of the second half of his rookie season. Jared Sullinger was hurt early, so he played a lot as early as a rookie. But he spent the majority of the second half in the G League. Here's a guy who scores 32 points in the NBA Finals, Game 1, his first experience, the Toronto Raptors' first experience. He scores 32 points, and 2 years ago, he was in the G League because he was getting developed. The same thing happened with Fred VanVleet, who we all know from Wichita State. He was amazing in college, but he wasn't even drafted, and he spent the majority of his 2016, same season, his 2016-17 season, back and forth in the G League. I think he was assigned and reassigned 16 times. Pascal Siakam was assigned 13 times. But there was a plan in place, and maybe we didn't see it, and maybe we got distracted by the process that they were going through, because every single season from 2015, 16, and 17 in the Eastern Conference Finals, and 15, and then in 16 and 17 the Eastern Conference semis, they kept running up against a brick wall in LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. And so we wrote off the Toronto Raptors. We said they can't get it done, but it doesn't mean that the success wasn't brewing behind the scenes. Obviously, we know what happened this past offseason with the trade that Masai Ujiri made for Kawhi Leonard. He replaced one superstar with a better superstar, and DeMar DeRozan sent them down to the San Antonio Spurs and got Kawhi Leonard. And here we find them. And as you really look at this, it says to you, there's a process to getting to an NBA final and actually finding a way to win. It's not by acquiring all the superstars that you can, which was the model that the Oklahoma City Thunder tried to do, by the way. We remember them about 6 or 7 years ago when they draft KD and they draft Russ and they draft James Harden, but they couldn't get it done. They couldn't work well together. And it's interesting as I think about this offseason, and we think about where the 5 Ks are going to go. KD and Kawhi and Kyrie and Clay and Kemba Walker. Anthony Davis is in this conversation as well. Jimmy Butler falls in there, even though he's a little bit lesser of a superstar than those ones that we're talking about, the Ks that we're talking about. As these guys start to think about this, as they get approached by the Celtics or the Nets or the Lakers or the Clippers or the Knicks, I wonder how many of them are thinking about the process that these teams are going through to build something first before they acquire the superstar. And as you look at this, the Celtics probably have the best situation for any one of these free agents, these superstar free agents, because of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Terry Rozier. And I think you can even throw in Marcus Smart into that conversation as well, because they have developed the young talent that'll be available for the superstar. And they kind of thought that was the case with Kyrie, but Kyrie was a little bit too enigmatic, so it didn't really work out. I don't want to say he was a bad teammate, but he was a quirky teammate. I find this success of the Raptors, which demonstrated itself in Game 1 of the NBA Finals against the Golden State Warriors, who are the back-to-back champions looking for a three-peat. And in everybody's mind, they had already been pushed into their third consecutive one. And look, that may still happen. I'm not, and again, as I said 10 minutes ago, I'm not worried about the Golden State Warriors. This is going to be a hell of a series. And because the Raptors have home court advantage in the Scotiabank Arena is unbelievable. I think the emotion in it is something that was, I think, caught the Golden State Warriors by surprise, especially early in this game. I'm not worried about them. But when I see the Raptors, it makes me think about how these superstars should be looking at the teams they may be going to next year. And I don't want to bury the lead. It's obviously about the Toronto Raptors, but the thing that jumped out to me is the process that the Raptors went through, which is almost a mirror, not exactly a mirror, but very similar to what the Golden State Warriors went through. So the Knicks, whether it's Knox or Mitchell or whoever it is, as they think about acquiring these superstars, they better have developed some non-superstars first. Otherwise, I think this Kawhi lesson that demonstrated itself in Game 1, or showed itself to the world, really, in Game 1 of the NBA Finals, is going to be very informative to these players. It's cool to go be the man somewhere, right? I'm going to go to New York. I'm going to be the man. But you're not going to win, because I don't care how good of a star you are. I know it's a strength-led NBA, so you got to have the star in order to win. But the star by himself doesn't always win. And I think Kawhi Leonard even proved that in Game 1. 23 points. He was inefficient. The Warriors had a great plan to slow him down. It was those other guys who were developed in the past couple of years who lifted this team past a team that a lot of people thought that they couldn't beat. That was my takeaway from this Game 1. It's going to be a fantastic series, and we'll talk about what it's going to take for the Golden State Warriors to get this thing right, especially with Boogie. DeMarcus Cousins hobbled a little bit. He was gassed, but that's not. I mean, you couldn't expect anything less than that. But he was out there. Can KD come back? But when you think about this Raptors team, this isn't an accident. They didn't just play great because the Warriors played terrible. Masai Ujiri had a plan. He executed it to perfection. Pascal Siakam was just the tip of the iceberg, I think, on what his career and what his development for this Raptors team is going to look forward to in the future.